Well, welcome back to another episode of the Rehumanist Podcast. If you hear some whining in the background, it's Charlie. He's at my feet. He gets nervous when we do anything out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what's going on. He thinks the whole world is ending.
He's so old that, he's just anxious all the time now.
So maybe we'll do a cutaway of him. The dog tax.
I just feel sorry for him now, so I don't get too mad.
It's hard when you're mostly deaf and
partially blind. Yeah.
Poor guy.
Feeling your way around the world with smell and...
So I'm just going to put my foot on his paw right here.
That actually might help him.
It might help a little bit.
Did you hear that sigh of contentment? Oh. He likes that.
Actually, now there's a separate dog licking my toes.
Another one. Agnes.
I can't get any peace in this household.
They love you.
Welcome back to another episode of the Rehumanist Podcast. We have been snowed in for what feels like months.
We say snowed in. We are able to move about.
Snowed in, but like our kids haven't been at school in a week.
That is true. That is wild.
We're getting ready to have to homeschool.
No. They're going to go to school tomorrow.
Yes. It's been an adventure, though, especially for us Texas people who are not in Texas anymore.
Not anymore. It's nice at the beginning, and then you're like, wow, this isn't going away. And then you have to deal with it for a long, long time. And it's so cold. So cold that your garage door won't open.
It's rough. It's rough out there.
Yeah.
Good first world problem to have, though.
It is. I love having a garage.
Garage. So, on this episode, we're talking about something that we are probably completely unqualified to talk about.
We really have nothing to say about this, honestly.
We're talking about dating and relationships in the modern world. Partly because it's an extension of talking about rehumaning in the sense of how technology has reshaped and reformed the social contract and just the way we move through the world, right? The way we interact with each other and with our institutions. So the past several decades have brought intense social change through technology, which has upended the way that humans interact, fall in love, and go through life together. And so in this episode, we are going to examine how dating and relationships have changed, what are the reasons behind these changes, and what does it mean for the future of society. You ready?
As I'll ever be.
But first, before we do that...
Oh, no.
We have a sponsor for this episode that was definitely not generated by ChatGPT. Cue the music. Everyone thinks that the best way to make money on the internet these days is by suckering people into purchasing overpriced online courses. But the real money is in selling online courses to people about how to make money selling online courses to people. That's why we've created the official online course creator course for course creators. In this 7-week course, you'll be guided through 47 different modules led by the online course creator course's leading experts, teaching you all about how to make an online course, teaching other people how to make online courses. You'll learn everything from how to shame people for being poor and unsuccessful to how to fabricate testimonials in order to build legitimacy. This course is more than just educating and entertaining. It's an investment into your financial future. Just listen to what one of our students, Derek, has to say. Before I found the official online course creator course for course creators, I was lost. I wanted to create an online course, but I didn't know where to start. Then I discovered this amazing program that taught me how to make an online course, that teaches others how to make online courses. Genius, right? Now, thanks to the official online course creator course for course creators, I run my own course called the Ultimate Course Mastery System, where I teach people how to create courses that teach people how to create courses. I've already helped dozens of students launch their own courses. And the best part? Some of their students are now teaching courses about making courses too. It's like an endless knowledge loop, and I'm making money while watching it happen. Sure, I am technically still in debt due to the initial purchase price, but with all the money my course is bringing in, I should break even in 1 to 3 business years.
Oh my God.
If you're not creating a course about creating courses yet, what are you even doing? Sign up today. If you want to end up like Derek, don't wait. Sign up now and receive a special offer of 20% off, along with a free AI-generated headshot where you're a few pounds lighter and have a better hairline for you to use in your LinkedIn profile. A limited amount of participants will also receive 10 of the official online course creator course for course creators' own cryptocurrency, CourseCoin. To get started, sign up for your free 9-hour consultation by visiting the official online course creator course for coursecreators.com and entering your social security number. So before we get into too much about modern dating relationships, let's talk about where we are at now. So one thing that, and this is going to become kind of relevant, one thing I think this is really interesting, is the teen birth rate. So the teen birth rate has absolutely plummeted over.
Which is wonderful.
Yes. It is an objectively good thing that fewer children are having children.
Right.
I mean, and when I say plummeting, I mean, like, I have this chart here. This is from the Pew Research Center, which shows that for every 1,000 females, 15 to 19, there used to be, back in the 50s, about 96 of them would give birth. That is down to 17 now.
Oh, my God. In the 1950s?
Yes.
When everybody thinks that was such like a pure...
Well, people also got married at 17 in the 1950s.
That is true.
But yes.
Okay, I forgot about that part.
So about 96.3 was the peak of 1,000 per 1,000 females. Now it's down to 17.
That's great.
Now it is different depending on different demographics like race.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it's incredible. It's great. You then have the question of like, well, what's causing that? So some people may think it's, abortions. It's just like, well, teenagers are still getting pregnant just as much, but they're just aborting all the babies. That's not true. So the data shows that the amount of abortions happening for that age bracket is plummeting at pretty much the exact same rate.
Wow.
So that's not really the reason why it's plummeting. Really, the biggest reason is just access to contraception. So the youths are wrapping it before they tap it nowadays.
Oh my
more
God, I can't believe you just said that. Are you trying to be cool right now?
I mean, how would you say that then?
You could just say use condoms.
Okay.
Oh my God. Okay, what are you?
I'm trying to be a serious intellectual here.
Wow.
Okay. The youths are just practicing safer sex.
There you go. That's how you say it.
Okay. The youths are practicing safer sex for the most part, but also another big contributing factor to the decline in teenage pregnancy is that they're just not having as much sex. And
abstinence then.
Sort of, but the reason they're also not having as much sex is because they're not dating as much. And the reason they're not dating as much is because they just have fewer relationships. And so we see this in a lot of data too. So I have this other article here about how it's really affecting young men in particular. So there's a romance gap among Gen Z, particularly with Gen Z, and especially with people like in their 20s.
Yeah.
A big part of it, as far as like why the youths aren't dating as much, is because of just an extension of the loneliness epidemic. So we're just not doing as much as we used to in general. And there's been a lot of research on this. We're still kind of trying to figure it out. But a big part of it is that back in the day, when there wasn't really anything to do inside, you went outside and you played with friends. You went, and you hung out in a parking lot, right?
Yeah.
You went and you just like set something on fire.
Oh no.
We used to do that all the time.
Did you do that?
Oh, we set so many things. Well, I mean, not like arson.
Okay.
I just mean just wood. Like wood
no, I
somewhere.
never went.
You go have
and
a fire somewhere.
Set something
play a guitar,
on fire.
You share secrets.
Okay, well that's different. I had a campfire. I didn't just like set random things on fire though.
Okay, right. The point is that you got up to mischief, right? Because there's nothing else to do. But now with the internet and with just the access we have to everything, it's way more convenient to just stay inside and
be on your phone.
Right. And so the youths are not only are they having less sex, they're also drinking less, they're smoking less, which again, like good things.
Like objectively speaking, that would be good.
They are good things, but the reason for that is kind of bad in that it's because they're just like not doing.
They
as much
literally are not going out and being with people.
Right. Which is also a reason why they think that Gen Z and Gen Alpha are experiencing high rates of anxiety is because they're like getting in trouble less, I guess is a way to say it. They're having fewer of those formative experiences where you're kind of put in a situation where you have to
work through some difficulties.
Right. You don't really have to work through difficulties. And I realize I'm starting to come off as like a kids these days kind of thing. But,
yeah, that's not what we're saying.
Anyways, so if you look at like the gender gap among romance, it's primarily affecting like men are more single than women.
How is that possible?
Well, first of all, a lot of women are dating women. Right. Because everybody loves women.
Yeah. I can't argue with you there.
We're all a little gay. Right?
Are we?
And then the big part of it, though, is that women are dating older men. So if you look at this cohort of like 18 to 29-year-olds, especially like that latter half there. Like,
so you're saying in specifically the younger generations is where there's the gap.
Right. Yeah, because if you like Gen Z women like 25 to 29 are dating men in their 30s.
Okay.
Whereas that's generally seen as less acceptable for men to be
For
dating
men
women in their
to
30s.
do that, yeah.
Or maybe not less acceptable, but less common.
And yeah, with society, the norms.
Hold on, I clicked on this article I saved, and now it's redirecting me.
Uh-oh. Got taken down by the feds.
Apparently.
No, I'm just kidding.
Honestly, at this point?
Maybe, depending on what
Wouldn't be
you
surprised.
had. Oh, no.
Yeah, so there's this other article I found. It's titled, from The Hill, it's titled, Most Young Men Are Single, Most Young Women Are Not.
Wow.
Which this is going to come up later here in a minute when we're talking about it. But yeah, it just talks a lot about like the changes in the social contract and things like that. But this brings us to the first point that I want to make about dating and relationships in the modern age, and that is that the loneliness epidemic is making dating less common because more of our relationships are online. We have more parasocial relationships with influencers and things like that. We have more relationships with people who maybe we're technically close to them, but most of our interactions are not face-to-face interactions. They're like sending memes to each other.
Right.
And that kind of social framework is going to spread into the dating scene as well. So this isn't anything new. This is something I talk about all the time. That
Yeah, we do talk about this a lot.
technology has mostly isolated us compared to connecting us. But I do feel like I need to nuance the conversation a little bit, which leads me to my second big point, which is that the internet has actually made it easier to connect with people who have similar interests and values.
Right.
So a while back, I shared this chart that showed, and I forget where exactly it came from. It might have been from the Pew Research Center as well, that tracked over time where people met their spouse or their partner, and how you see the highest one is, I think, the highest one is through friends, and then it's like church, work, and how all of those have kind of basically gone to the bottom,
tapered.
and then online has increased.
Wow.
And I mean, I think there's like good and bad things we can say about that.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that, like, also to say, like, there's nothing inherently bad about meeting somebody online.
This
of
is
course.
all just the facts of what is happening currently. There's good and bad about meeting people in person.
Right. And that's the thing is that what it has done is for people who are looking for a romantic partner, it has opened the dating pool to essentially all human beings.
Yeah, it's not just a pool, it's an ocean.
Right.
Yeah, it's
So,
vast.
For most of human history, other than places where marriages were arranged, if you wanted to find a partner, you just kind of picked one of the 10 people who you were compatible with in a 20-mile radius and hope things work out.
Yeah.
You know?
Which also is probably not good. So.
Well, yeah, we'll get into why that leads to very bad things. It's kind of like, do you remember that meme that was like where it says, it's like your mom who says, why don't you just date that nice boy from youth group?
Oh,
and then
my
it says
gosh.
like the nice boy from youth group, and it's just the weirdest guy doing the weirdest thing. That used to be the reality, is that you could only really date the people who were like in proximity with you.
Right.
And that's just not the case anymore. So
Can I be honest?
am I the weird kid from youth group?
Yeah. You would have been the meme babe.
So you're saying I just made it?
You just made it.
If online dating had started before we got together,
Who knows?
would have been game over. You might be right, honestly.
I don't know. We'll never know now.
Yeah, this is what happens. I remember saying that to you the other day. You got mad at me about something. I said, this is what you get for marrying the weird kid from youth group.
It's true. I don't even remember what I got mad at you about.
So this second point, this idea that the internet has made it easier to connect with people who have similar interests and values, is kind of a double-edged sword. Because on one hand, like, it is good, because say you really want to find somebody who's into, I don't know, fishing or fixing cars or knitting, and not that your spouse or your partner has to have all the same hobbies as you, but you can kind of find people through hobbies or shared interests a bit easier. You can filter people faster by looking at their internet feeds and seeing what kind of posts they interact with and so on and so forth. But the other side of it that's kind of makes it hard is that even though as technology has widened the pool of potential partners, it can be great, but it can also kind of burden you with choice.
Yeah, like I said, now you don't have a dating pool, you have a dating ocean.
Right.
Which, like, there's many fish in the sea, right? That's what they say. Too many. That's too many fish to choose from.
Exactly, which creates something that sociologists call the anxiety of choice.
I have that every single day.
I think you just have anxiety.
I do. Well, definitely when it comes to choices.
And we see this a lot with careers.
Oh.
So back in the day, for most of human history, your job was just going to be whatever your dad's job was because he just taught you how to do it.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you did that, and then you taught it to your son, so on and so forth. And now, students turn 18 years old, and we say, pick one of the thousands of careers that are available to you. Yeah. And hey, you're going to be doing it for 45 years, so you better love it.
Yeah, better love it.
And then we
Don't
wonder
pick the
why.
wrong one.
And then we wonder why young people have so much anxiety.
Oh my gosh.
But it can be very similar with the dating pools. This idea is, back in the day, you only had these 10 people in a 20-mile radius to choose from,
right.
Sure, who were like your age. But hey, you have those 10 people. Which one's the best one?
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, and we're millennials. I feel like we were on the cusp of that versus the online. Because, like, to be honest, there were probably only like 10, 15, right? Like,
Yeah.
In any given radius around us. We had the beginning. We were at the cusp of the beginning of social media. We had the very beginnings of it all. MySpace, Facebook. Like, we were there at the beginning. We're so old.
I'm pretty sure I was in your top 5.
Yeah, you were in top 8, baby. Top 8.
I don't remember this. This is 20 years ago.
I know, I do. So yeah, top 8, and then.
Don't tell Tom. I forgot.
Well, he was always at the top, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I don't remember if we could move him.
I don't remember.
No, and it doesn't matter anymore. Anyway, yeah, like, but we still. It wasn't to hone. It wasn't the way social media is now. So you still couldn't connect a whole lot. You could begin to. It was the very beginnings of it, connecting with people who weren't near you.
Right.
But for us, at least, probably one of the reasons we stayed together.
It's because I didn't have any competition. Is that what you're saying?
Well, not just you, but like me too. Like,
yeah.
It was us. We that's all we had. So.
And I think that's what you see a little bit. I mean, again, I'm not speaking from experience here. We've been out of the game for a while.
A long time.
But from what I can gather, and from what it seems to be the case, is that once you have, again, access to this dating pool of technically all humans ever, because you can always do a long distance relationship.
Right.
What it means is that, okay, once you have the ability to choose from anybody, well, then like, okay, the range of compatibility is way higher. Mm-hmm. So there's kind of this feeling of like you always got to be holding out for the perfect person who kind of checks every single box. And just fits perfect. Right. And that can create a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
Which actually leads into point number 3 about dating and relationships in the modern age. And that is that the culture of optimization and hyper-dependence have made marriage and relationships less desirable and harder to obtain.
Hyper-independence. Are you talking about women here?
No. I'm going to talk about women later. That sounds bad. No. I'm not talking... sorry, I should have said hyper-individualism.
Okay, there you go.
I used the wrong word.
I was like, independence is usually used
women
in
think
context
they
with
don't
women.
need men anymore.
Shut up.
And let me tell you something on my podcast. As a white man...
Oh, my Lanta.
So anyways, it's probably a good thing that we've raised our standards, that we have the ability to not just choose between those 10 or 15 people. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, because have you listened to a story of your grandparents lately? Not just, I'm talking about not your grandparents in general, but like in general.
Oh,
like,
right.
If you go and ask about like, how did grandma and grandpa get together? Like, it's usually not good.
Right. I mean, there was that whole trend on TikTok for a while where people would, I guess it sounds bad to say they made fun of their grandmothers.
No, they were
basically like sharing the grandmother's story and how the grandma shared it as this sweet love story, but looking back at it in a modern context, it was like you were abused, you were groomed.
You were groomed. You were taken basically as a young child bride.
Right. No, so here's what I mean by that, about the culture of optimization and hyper individualism have made marriage relationships less desirable, harder to obtain. We exist in a culture context now where we are taught to always keep our options open. And we're taught that anything that limits us should be avoided. And the problem with that is that very many good things are inherently limiting.
Yeah.
Right? Like marriage is inherently limiting.
Yes.
Because I am married, I am limited in, like, I can't just have a bunch of sexual partners.
Right.
I can't go traveling around the world. I can't sell everything and move into a van, you know.
Wait.
I mean, we kind of
we already did that.
Point being, and not that I'm like saying I want to do those things, but I'm saying the point is that marriage is a good thing, but part of having that good thing is intentionally limiting yourself.
Right.
And I think honestly, like, I think that's a big reason why people are having so many it seems like there's such a hard, there's so many kind of barriers into forming healthy romantic relationships nowadays, is because there's this anxiety of choice, but there's also this anxiety of optimization of not only just like if I pick the wrong person, but like, what if I fall in love with somebody, but then I want to move across the country for my job?
Right.
Some people, their careers are more important. And I'm not saying that's like good or bad, but it's just the reality is that we're kind of taught to always make decisions based on what's going to give us the most amount of freedom, because we're taught that the freedom of the individual is like the most important thing.
Right.
And then we wonder why society's collapsing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Because again, good things are inherently limiting. Somebody who's getting their PhD, they're pretty limited in what they can do. They're always in school. They're always studying. They're writing their dissertation. Right. Somebody who's training for a marathon can't just eat nachos and drink Gatorade every night.
Yeah.
Right? Like, good things actually do limit you, but...
It's like it's a play in self-discipline.
Right. Yeah. And I think that in previous generations, there tended to be more of an emphasis on kind of being part of something bigger than yourself, on kind of being part of society. I think there's a shadow side to that too.
Yeah, definitely.
Of like, a lot of people got married out of obligation because like, this is what you do. A lot of people had kids out of obligation.
They didn't have a whole lot of choice.
Because it was like, you have to, this is what it means to be a good member of society. And then it turned out really badly. But I think that it's possible that in some instances we've kind of gone too far in the other direction, where it's like life is basically entirely about being comfortable and having fun.
Right.
Which is great, but it's also, I think, over time, like, leads to a lot of emptiness, and it leads to a lot of like societal malaise. Is that a word?
Yeah,
I
would agree.
Yeah. So, long story short, getting married or being in a committed relationship and having children can cut into one's ability to Netflix and chill. I think that's why you see a lot of situationships, because in the situationship, you kind of have all the benefits.
That is like such a strange thing. I was like, what is a situationship? And then I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Basically, no real commitment.
And I realized I'm probably sounding like all of the evangelical pastors that
back in my day.
Anyways, I realized that I don't want to come off as judgmental here, but usually anytime somebody says that, they're about to say something really judgmental. Yeah. But I think that like the idea of the reason that situationships have become so popular is because it's a relationship where you kind of reap all the benefits of a relationship without any of the negatives. Yeah. Without you get the companionship, you get the sex, you get all that time spent together, but at the end of the day, you're not actually sacrificing anything. So it's a way of trying to have the good aspects of that relationship without limiting yourself, because limiting yourself is bad in the society that we've created. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to preface this next one by saying that I'm about to speak at length about the lived experience of women.
Maybe you should ask me.
So what I was going to say is that, of course, you have total veto power for the next part of this conversation. Okay. Not because I'm giving it to you, because I don't have power to give that to you. It's just you have it automatically.
I already got it.
By nature of being a woman. So feel free to interject.
I'm all ears. Please tell me what I don't already know.
Okay.
Mansplain it to me, baby.
Let me tell you, I would like to explain feminism to you on my podcast as a white man.
As a white man in a yellow beanie.
But here's the reality. This is kind of sad. Is that a lot of men, a lot of what men need to hear from women, they will only listen to from
another man. Oh, do I know it?
Yeah. Anyways, are we on number 4 now?
This is number 4, I believe. Yeah.
Okay. 4th observation about dating and relationships in the modern world and why it might affect us. Changing dynamics around women's role in society has shifted the value proposition of marriage and partnership.
Well, ain't that the truth?
Sure. So I do feel like entering this conversation do need to nuance things a little bit, because I feel like as society polarizes, you're kind of seeing this hyperfeminism, this like the 4B movement, things like that, the Me Too movement, and then on the other side, you're seeing the kind of the trad wife movement.
Oh goodness.
Trying to like pull women back into the kitchen essentially. But then on the other side, you have this idea of like women don't need men,
right,
at all. So let's look. The nice thing is that there's data. You can just look at data.
Yeah, let's look at the data.
So what the data says actually is that marriage is still like better for everybody. So there's kind of this idea that like marriage is for men and not for women, that like men need marriage, but women don't necessarily need marriage. And that, again, that's like pretty far. I mean, have you kind of encountered stuff like that?
And maybe not in those words. I think it's mostly like men benefit the most from marriage,
right,
because of the way that society has built marriage.
Because women are constantly doing all of the
women are
labor.
the ones who have the mental and menial labor of it all.
But then on the other side of the things, you have this idea that like women were made for making babies and taking care of the home, and so women should be in marriages as like that should be their number one goal in life. Right?
Those are the two extremes.
Right. We think of like like Harrison Butler's speech about like this is what you should try to attain.
Oh, don't remind me.
So I would like to nuance this a little bit and show that like they've done some happiness tests. I found this really interesting paper. It's called The Socio-Political Demography of Happiness, and it talks about happiness in marriage. And basically the way it works is that married people across the board tend to be happier than single people,
really,
men and women. So the way it goes
like
is
in good marriages,
right? Well, I think it's just like averaged.
Okay.
So because there's like probably happy single people and unhappy single people. So it goes married men are at the top.
Yeah.
And then are the happiest, of course.
Right.
And then just beneath them are married women. So it is true. It is true that marriage is best for men. So men benefit from marriage more than women. It really
doesn't surprise me at all.
Right. But women also benefit from marriage way more than not.
Right.
So that's what I'm trying to say. Like the nuance there is like, it doesn't make sense.
I agree.
So then, and then way beneath that, single women are next to happiness.
Okay, that makes sense too.
Yes. So basically, men just have these wider swings. Men, and the reason
they're at the top and the bottom.
And the reason is because men are not as good at socializing. They're not as good at maintaining deep, intimate friendships, and so they rely more on their partner for that companionship. Whereas women, while they still obviously rely on their partner, their marriage or girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, while they may rely on their partner for that companionship, they're better at also relying on their friends for that kind of companionship. So married men are happiest. Married women are also happy. Beneath them, single women, still pretty happy. Beneath them, single men, not so hot.
Not so happy.
Yeah. This is like kind of a sensitive topic. So I wrote out a paragraph. I'll just read it.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So in the past, women relied on men and by extension relied on marriage to men to make it through life. But the increasing economic independence of women has made that relationship less necessary. We still lack the social technology to navigate this new economic reality. This creates tension between men and women seeking partnership.
All right, hold on. You're going to have to clarify a whole lot of that.
Okay.
First of all,
yes,
the first part is true, but only because women had no rights. They were forced to rely on the men to get through life. Okay.
Good. I'm not disagreeing with you.
Right. Clarification there. But the second part, we don't have the social, what was it?
The social technology to navigate this new economic reality.
Why not? What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that we are socializing young men for a world that no longer exists.
Socializing young men, you mean boys are being raised a certain way.
As if that reality is still true. As if
the women
still need to rely on them.
But
they don't. And then the men get out in the world and realize, oh, actually what women need from me is emotional intelligence.
Right.
And to know what the Bechdel test is.
There we go.
But I was told women will love you for being a provider. And while that still is like the case in the instances, it's like, that's not as important anymore. Right. Because women have the ability to provide for themselves now. So if you think about an observation I've noticed is that listen to the way that older generations, older women talk about the men that they love.
Right.
And generally what they'll say is like, he's such a hard worker.
That's almost
he's such
exactly
a great provider.
What they say.
Right. And that's because that was the social contract when they were growing up.
Right.
Is that you married a man because the man takes care of you. And what has happened is, so I'm actually about to mansplain feminism. So please,
wait, should
I
say this?
Down.
Maybe I should say this so that you're not mansplaining
I'm
it, because I could talk about feminism. Let me tell you.
I'll give you a platform. Let me say this part, and then you can talk as much as you want.
Keep going.
So I was going to give you a definition of feminism to then use in the context of defining where men are and where men need to go.
Okay.
So if we think about feminism as the women renegotiating their role with society and with themselves. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
It's a very broad definition.
No,
incredibly broad.
Yes, incredibly broad.
So, yeah, you have this feminism movement that I guess you could. When did feminism start? Like with suffrage, probably since the beginning of time.
Before then,
I'm assuming it started when women started.
They have always been fighting.
So, but if we think about the 20th century and into the 21st century, and how women have renegotiated that role, so that's something that they did on purpose, right?
Yes.
Because women wanted to have agency.
Yes.
They wanted to be able to just
and not
rely
be
on
objects.
Exactly. So what we're seeing is that because that has been successful to an extent,
right.
we can talk about if it's been successful enough, but because there has been all that social change, it's kind of forced men into also renegotiating their relationship with society. So you kind of have feminism as this movement, this intentional movement, but then you have this like meninism. This is unintentional movement.
Oh wait, say that again.
Meninism? I just
No,
but that's what I mean. It's like it's this idea. That's what I mean by the idea that we don't have the social technology to navigate the new economic reality.
Okay,
is that men are trying to pretend like things are kind of still the way they were,
still the same,
even though they're not.
Right.
So I'm gonna get kind of into the meat of this a little bit. But then, I don't know. I would like to hear what you have to say about that before I go on.
About how men are pretending nothing's wrong.
About I guess about how men aren't
burying
picking
their heads in the sand like ostriches.
Oh man, you've been thinking about a lot.
Babe, I'm a woman. Of course I think about these things.
Okay. So tell me more about it.
I mean, I think about it all the time. Not that I have anything intelligent to say other than it is very true, I think. And at least, and of course, social media is ruled by algorithms. And, you see different things. Everybody sees different things. And, of course, I'm going to have things geared towards feminism, geared towards, the things that I'm interested in and I agree with, right? That's just... What is it called? The bias?
Confirmation bias?
Confirmation bias. Thank you. So like most, the things you get on your feed is going to be confirmation bias for a lot of things you believe already.
Sure.
But I often see videos and I think, man, like they just don't get it. They don't get it. Yeah. And I think some of it's exaggerated, obviously, for social media, but I do believe
it is some selection bias going.
Bet that there are men out there who still think. I mean, okay.
Oh no!
Think
What's
about
happening? What's happening?
Think about the election that we just had.
Okay.
There are people who think this way still.
Sure.
Many people.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Do I need to give you some more time on this?
No.
You can take all the time you want.
No, it's just and it's just unfortunate because a lot of people don't see what's wrong with it.
Sure. And I think part of that has to do with how you think about the relationship of biology and culture and society and what flows downstream from what.
Right.
And even, this is a big conversation that even gets into the idea of morality and where does morality come from? Where does reality come from? Is reality something that came from some ultimate source that was structured in a way that we're meant to obey? Or is reality something that is really just a bunch of rules about physics that we follow and, hey, everything is made up, so let's just make up things how we want to make it up? That's a rabbit hole. We can't get down there.
That's some deep stuff.
I would like to share so a little bit more about, hopefully kind of explain a little bit, and this isn't like giving an excuse for men, but I think it isn't a good explanation. So there's a guy named Richard Reeves. He wrote this book, Of Boys and Men, Why the Modern Male is Struggling, Why It Matters, and What to Do About It. So you mentioned the election. Mm-hmm. Young men tend to vote more conservative in the election, of course.
Yeah. That's just the data, folks.
That's just the data. And there's like some big reasons for that. And that's because, and I say this as somebody who I try to reign mostly pretty, like not non-political, but like pretty politically neutral and try to always understand the arguments and weaknesses from both sides. Mm-hmm. But like the political left and the cultural left has pretty much just completely left young men behind. And so, like, of course they're voting conservative. Like,
because then their only alternative is the people who are like, oh, men,
right.
like, let's lift you up.
Exactly.
You are the backbone of our society.
You have all of these. Like, I totally understand why most young men are leaning conservative and voting for Trump. It makes sense to me. But I want to share this guy, Richard Reeves, who wrote this book, A Voice in Men, Why the Modern Male is Struggling, Why It Matters, and What to Do About It. He pretty much sums up his whole argument in like this one paragraph. He says, I argue the following. 1, the male role has been culturally defined as that of a provider and based on the economic dependence of mothers on men. 2, this traditional role has been dismantled by the securing of economic independence by women. 3, culture and policy are stuck on an obsolete model of fatherhood, lagging way behind economic reality. It's kind of what I was saying earlier. And 4, this is resulting in a dad deficit, with men increasingly unable to fulfill the traditional breadwinner role, but yet to step up into a new one.
Because they don't have anything to step into.
Right. And so there's this idea. So, for instance, Title IX was passed in the 1970s. And before Title IX was passed, the demographics of people in higher education was about 60% men, 40% women.
Right.
And it was thought, okay, we need to get more women in. So, because the population is 50-50, we should have a little more equality when it comes to people who want to get degrees.
Yeah.
So Title IX was passed in the 70s. Now that demographic has totally flipped. So now there's 60% women going in higher education, getting degrees, 40% men. And so men are kind of like falling behind, right? And a lot of people would argue this and then say, well, that's fine. It's like men have the trades, men have manufacturing, things like that. But the problem is a lot of those manufacturing jobs have also like gone overseas because of globalization.
Right.
And because of automation. So you think about a lot of these like rural farming towns in West Texas where we're from that have just been totally decimated over the past half century. And what happened was, back in the day, they had these big populations because in order to pick this field of cotton or harvest this field of corn, you needed 10 guys. But now you need one guy and a $500,000 combine or whatever, and so there's really less of that hard work to do. And if you go even further back, if you look at this as a trend that's been happening for the past 125, 150 years, the world is just a lot softer than it was in the past.
Yeah.
It's a lot more tamed. More of the work that has to be done in modern society is not protecting the family from coyotes or building your own house out on the prairie, or fighting off Native Americans, or things like that. I guess culturally we're taught to think of as masculine. Like so much of the work of the modern world is maintaining relationships, is leading meetings, sending emails, and the world is a much softer place, which again I would argue is like an objectively good thing because like there's less suffering. We're fighting fewer wars. We don't need as many people fighting and dying, which is a good thing, but it also means
we're not trying to. Well, no, that's not true. We are trying to colonize, aren't we? Never mind.
Well,
tangent. Sorry.
You just had to throw that in there.
Sorry.
My point being that there is this kind of archetype of this is what a man looks like, but there are fewer and fewer ways for boys to fill that role. And one of the last ways was as a provider.
Yeah.
And now, again, women don't need that.
Right.
So, which I do want to say that I think that there can be some correction in saying like it's okay to be a trad wife, of course, and like to want that. Like
the error comes in whenever that's the only thing that they want for everyone. Right.
But I'm saying like if a woman wants to be a homemaker,
right. The whole
she should not be ostracized for wanting that.
No, the whole point is for the woman to have the choice and the agency to do what she wants to do.
Right.
To be a trad wife, to go and be a worker, to go and be a worker and a trad wife. Either it's just a stay-at-home mom or to work and be a mom at the same time, to do whatever. That's the whole point.
And honestly, I find that this political moment we find ourselves in is defined by a couple of big things. I mean, obviously there's a lot going on. One of the big things, and this shows up in the data quite a bit actually, is we're seeing a lot of the polarization is happening between people, essentially people who like are sure of God's existence and people who aren't.
Yeah.
So not necessarily like Christians and atheists, but people who are deeply devoted religiously and kind of have that as their guiding light,
right,
versus people who maybe they believe in God, maybe they don't, but so essentially it's kind of this bifurcation of like the sacred and the secular. That's one of the things that's happening. But I think a big part of what's also happening in this cultural moment is the separation of man's role in society. And again, there's lots of different
Which
reasons.
is definitely, here's my take on that.
Okay.
I don't think that it's a bad thing for that man's role to change. I do think it is bad for that argument of like there's nothing for them to step into. When you take something away, you need to have something to fill that void.
Right, which I think that's what Richard Reeves is arguing. He's saying that the problem is that men are kind of stuck in this idea of our identity as a provider.
Right. And that, it's just, I don't know, like you said, men tend to not listen to women.
Yeah.
Because I do think that women could help.
Can I clarify,
I think
actually?
that they could tell a lot of men exactly what needs to happen, but it's not going to happen because men are not going to listen to us.
Men may not listen to anybody unless they have a podcast and muscles.
Yeah.
So I've got 1 out of 2. Not bad.
Maybe they'll listen to you then.
Well, again, I think the reason is because the previous world order was better for men, and I think it's hard to have social change that
when you get the worst end of the stick.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's definitely part of it.
This is also, this is such a deep conversation. This is also a conversation we talk about, like how the patriarchy also hurts men. So I don't think that's totally like blanket statement,
right.
But it's definitely perceived that way. If you perceive the idea that in the past when men were providers and always in charge of women, that was better for men, why would we want to move forward? Right. And I think you kind of see a lot of this energy. And again, there's a lot of reasons to be like conservative, to vote conservative, to have that mindset. But there is this one kind of branch of the conservative movement now that is essentially saying we made a mistake. And again, this is like far right. So I don't want to like, I'm not making a blanket statement about anyone who's on the political right. But there is this far right movement that is essentially saying we made a mistake. Women need to go back to their traditional roles. And like I said, I think there is a piece of that that's
not
true.
Not only that, if you're far enough right, they want not just the traditional roles, they want women to not have rights anymore.
Oh, yeah. They want 1 vote per household.
It's literally terrifying.
Yes. Again, I do want to nuance this by saying we shouldn't shame people who want to hold those traditional roles individually. Right. Like
right.
We can hold that space while also saying, hey, it is an objectively good thing that women have agency.
Yes.
Like, and I just want to obviously go on the record saying like, and it's ridiculous that in the year of our Lord 2025,
you have to clarify that. I know.
Yes, I think it is good that women work
and have rights to vote and rights.
Even that I have to say that, but not only that, but you think about all of the works of art and the inventions and the discoveries that we have missed out on as a species because we have been. Half of our society has been chained to domestic labor and procreation. Most. You know what I mean?
There's always the argument, though, that women have been creating all of time and men have been taking credit for it.
Yeah. I've heard. Okay, so, explain that more.
Oh, I mean, there's lots of theories.
Because there couldn't have been an Isaac Newton without Isaac Newton's mom to give birth to him.
No, that's not the point.
Okay.
I mean, true, yes, obviously, but there's a theory that William Shakespeare did not write his own plays, and that a woman did. Yeah. Again, there's just a theory.
Hey, there's probably some women who were written out of the Bible. So
very true. Very true.
Yeah. You know the whole passages in 1 Timothy or whatever about how women should be quiet in church and all that. Yeah. Not written by Paul, turns out.
Oh, just added later by a man.
Okay, I shouldn't say that. Like 70%, something like 70%, maybe 68%. A slight majority of biblical scholars believe that the pastoral epistles are pseudoepigraphical.
Wow.
We can't get into this either. Another rabbit hole.
No, we're not going to go down there.
Okay.
Pull you back.
Well, okay. So, yeah, I think the idea of saying, like, okay, we have all these problems now with dating relationships. Let's bring this all back to
right.
dating.
Like, how does it all come back?
So much of this, of the tension that I see in like the modern relationship scene has to do with this idea of men still feel like they need to embody this role.
Right.
Women have moved on. They're wanting other things from men. women want other things from men, which isn't to say that like if you're a woman, you're not allowed to like.
Can
want
we
a man to
talk
provide.
about
You can
what those
absolutely.
other things are?
Yeah, tell me what they are. Thought experiment. I don't exist. You're not married yet. You're looking for a man.
I'm still my age.
You're still your age. What are you looking for? What are you looking for in a man?
All right. Okay. This is an interesting. I like this. Okay. So I would definitely not be looking for a traditionally minded man.
What do you mean by that?
I
want to be a filthy leftist socialist?
Okay. I'm definitely probably would find somebody left on the left leaning side.
You're really exposing yourself.
I am. I don't care. You can think whatever. We listen and we do not judge. All right, people. If you have something to say to me, you can come say it. I don't care.
Okay.
No, yeah, I would probably find someone who is not going to think of me only as wife and mother to future children. Like that's obviously I am a wife and I am a mother, so that's obviously important. And that's, again, it all comes down to choice, the ability to choose.
So you're saying like you would want a man who sees
me,
your agency, who sees you as somebody
Yes.
who sees you as somebody who is creating their identity through the way they move through the world.
Exactly.
Rather than somebody whose identity is rooted in
My values,
who
like
they are.
the values of home and being a stay. Like there's so many. Yeah, I just somebody who's just going to be my partner and not my overlord. You know what I'm saying?
So you're saying you're not all about that Proverbs 31 energy?
Sadly, not anymore. Sorry, babe.
I almost called you a Jezebel as a joke,
What
but
a
then I thought that would be
Jezebel.
too far.
Oh, well.
We both know I'm
Probably
a Jezebel in this
some-
relationship. Man, people who are listening to this who like didn't grow up the way we did are probably missing so many references.
Yeah, they'll get the Jezebel reference though. That's a pretty common one.
That's true. This is such a big conversation. We could have so many
We could
more
go on
thoughts
and
about
on.
this. I'll wrap it up by saying this. I think this idea that we have these new sets of problems and men are getting left behind because of the way the social contract has changed has created these new sets of problems. But the idea of, okay, because of that, let's turn back the clock is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah,
Like,
that's not an option.
it's essentially the philosophical equivalent of saying, hey, humans used to sleep a lot better before we invented electricity. So let's go break all of our light bulbs.
Right.
Like if you solve your new sets of problems by going back to the way things were, then you have your old sets of problems again, which our old sets of problems were women didn't have an agency. They were abused. They were raped.
Yeah.
They were forced into marriages.
Kidnapped.
Had no ability to provide for themselves.
Yep.
We can't go back to that. So the only way is to go forward, which means men have to find a way to renegotiate what their role is in society in the context of women no longer needing to rely on them economically. And
Basically, suck it up, buttercup.
in other words, go do the damn dishes, bro.
Seriously. Without her asking.
But let's wrap it up all the way to the back. We talked about that fourth one for like 30 minutes.
It's an important one.
It was an important one. I think it's maybe the biggest one.
One of the biggest
But,
reasons.
You know, I do think about like our children who will be dating eventually and what that looks like. And so
be
I think
so
we
hard.
need to think about like connecting youth in productive ways and safe ways.
Right.
But really
Bring it back to the youth.
Getting them out into the world. Getting them around those 10
Yes.
people who are in a 20-mile radius who they're compatible
I
with.
think we're doing a good job of that for
Yeah.
our own sake. Because we live in a small community.
Yeah.
I think our community is really good at making opportunities to connect.
Yeah. A big part of it is just acknowledging the massive amount of social change that has happened. It's created a new set of problems, and that the way of moving forward with those new sets of problems is by embracing community,
Right.
face-to-face community, and having conversations like this.
Right.
So, cool. Anything else? Anything else you got?
Not about this. Not right now.
Did I do okay explaining feminism to you?
Oh, it's
on the
great.
podcast?
Yes, thank you for explaining it to me, babe. I didn't
I'm
know.
glad that you know now that you have rights. Did you know I have rights?
Not enough, apparently. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm not.
I'm pretty sure Charlie just farted, so we gotta get out of
No.
here. It's about to be bad.
We've got to leave.
Until next time.
Bye-bye.